Tuesday night Kali Maa Studies. So every Tuesday night I come on 6 o'clock Pacific Coast time, and we're taking a deep, deep dive into the 1008 names of the Holy Mother. And this is called the Kali Sahasranama. So I've really enjoyed all of your comments and feedback over the last several episodes that we've done. And tonight we are going to be doing verse 9 of the Kali Sahasranama. So before we begin, let's go ahead and do our 3 ohms to clear the energy around us, to clear our minds, to ground ourselves, and give greetings and salutations to the Holy Mother's Son, Ganesha, who we always give respect to before diving into the Mother's mysteries. So go ahead and bring your hands to heart center and take a nice big inhale. Clear and ground all the energy around you. Second time, hands in Anjali Mudra. Inhale. And a third time. And then we give reverence to Ganesha. Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha. Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha. Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha. Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha. Ekadantaya Vidmahe Vakratundaya Dhimahi Tanno Dantihi Prachodayat. Om Namo Bhagavate Ekadamsraya Hasmakaya Lambodharaya Uchista Mahatmane Om Krom Rim Gege Swaha. All right, let's go ahead and get started with tonight's names and forms of Kali Maa. So, like I said, we are on verse 9, and I always put the actual verse from the Kali Sahasranama with the proper spelling and markings of the names in the description of the video. And of course, if you're not subscribed, subscribe so you always catch when I'm live. So, the verse 9 goes over names 61 through 68. So the verse for tonight, let's take a look at it. You can look in the description, is Mahesvari Chamunda Varahi Narasimhika Vajrangi Vajrakankali Nrmundasragviṇī śivā. So that's what it sounds like in spoken song form. So let's look at the individual names for tonight. We have Maheshvari. We have Chamunda. We have big hitters tonight. Big names. Varahi Narasimhika Vajrangi. Vajrakankali and Nrmundasragviṇī, and lastly but not least, Shiva as one of the names of the Holy Mother. So let's start off by looking at Maheshvari. Now, Maheshvari, the general meaning of it is she who is the great seer of all. Good evening, Luna. Maheshvari means great goddess. And interesting, tonight I'm going to talk a little bit about what are called the matrikas. So Maheshvari is one of the 7 or 8 matrikas. Now, depending on the lineage, there's either sapta matrikas, 7 mothers, or ashta matrikas, 8 mothers. And the Saptamatrikas are related to the Palladian star cluster. And the 7 matrikas are generally known as 1. Brahmani or Brahmi. We covered that name in number 56. Vaishnavi, also known as Narayani, and that was in the last episode we did, name number 57. And then there's Maheshvari, which is in tonight's grouping, that's number 61. Varahi, which we covered tonight, is 63. Indrani. Now, interestingly, Indrani is also Vajrāṅgī, and that's number 65 tonight. So you can see we're covering a lot of the matrikas tonight. And it goes on. There's also Kumari, or also known as Ambika, and then Chamunda, who we'll be covering tonight. Now, Maheshvari, as we know, is the Shakti goddess of Maheshvara, Shiva Maheshvara. And if you just look at the word Maheshvari, it's broken into Mahe, or Maha, and Ishvari. So Ishvari, we already know from previous classes, Maha means great, incredible, fantastic. And Ishvari means goddess, or more specifically, sovereign ruling goddess. Now, Maheshvari fights right beside Durga Ma in the epic battle to defeat 2 asuras in particular. The 2 demons' names are Chamunda and Munda, and we'll see where that comes into play tonight when we look at the goddess form Kali as Chamunda, but not yet. We're not there yet. So Maheshvari fought next to Durga and Chamunda and the other matrikas to conquer Chanda and Munda. And another story, there was a demon by the name of Durgam, not Durga, not Durgama, Durgam. And Durgam had acquired this special boon. You know, a lot of the demons, they do all these penance and these spiritual practices, and then they're like, and now I want something. Most of the time they say, I want to be indestructible, undefeatable. Anyways, Durgam, of course, the boon was to make him invincible. And so once he became invincible, he caused a devastating drought that lasted for 100 years. And all the celestial beings and all the people on earth started to cry and plead, and they said, please, please, great Maheshwari, great sovereign mother, end this horrible drought that's killing so many of us, especially the humans, of course. And so Goddess Maheshwari was said to be so moved by the sounds of the suffering and the pleads that she cried. She wept for 9 full days and nights until it created a river that restored the effects of the drought. Now, other things that we see with Maheshwari, she is depicted naturally with 3 eyes, and she has a crescent moon in her hair. We're seeing a lot of repeating symbology come up if you've been following each of these episodes. She rides the bull by the name Nandi. Many of you, if you've visited temples or you've seen pictures, there's a bull that is guarding the temple and guarding Dharma, righteousness. Now, Maheshwari is also seen with a kapala, a skull bowl. She's seen sometimes also holding an antelope, which is said to be very fast, very swift. Other things that give away the iconography of Maheshwari, she has a garland of skull beads, and also one hand held up in abaya, saying, do not fear, and the other in varada, granting boons. But like, how do you know the difference now between what seems to be just another image of Kali. Is it Kali or is it Kali? Maheshvari, we see because she's riding that bull, Nandi, Shiva's bull. All right. Number 62 is Chamunda. Chamunda, Jai Chamunda Ma. Now, Chamunda is said to be translated as she who moves in the paradigm of consciousness. But let's take a really close look at Chamunda. Chamunda is said to be terrifying. She's pitch black in color. She's very emaciated. They say that she has a sunken in stomach and very prominent ribs and sunken in eyes and protruding fangs. She's holding a trident. She's holding a sword. She's holding what looks like a club, or they call it a mace with a skull on it. That's also known as a ktvanga, Khatvanga. And she is also wearing a garland of skulls, and she wears lots of snakes. But one of the classic features of Chamunda is her emaciation and terrifying look. Chamunda is said to reside in the cremation grounds in particular. And almost all of the goddesses and forms of Kali Maa ride what's called a vahana. That's like their vehicle. Vahana means vehicle. And Chamunda is well known for riding a corpse or a ghost. They call it a preta, which means like ghost. And she also is seen sometimes riding a jackal or an owl. Good evening, Louis. Thanks for joining. Now, Chamunda, as we said in the beginning, is also one of the matrikas, the groupings of the really powerful goddesses and forms of Kali Maa. Now, in chapter 7 of the Chandipath, a very classical book on Kali Maa was given the name Chamunda after she defeated the demon brothers by the name Chanda and Munda. So put those together, what do you get? Chamunda. And it is said that Chanda and Munda attempted to capture Devi. And during that moment, when they were trying to capture her, her face turned pitch black with rage. Good evening, Kalaratri. And when her face turned pitch black, Chamunda leapt forth from her. And during this time, her eyes began to burn bright, bright red and was piercing everybody with fear. In the story, her mouth gaped open and her tongue protruded out as a sword. They say that at this time she began to roar in all directions, and she took a net and captured the entire army of Chanda and Munda and dragged them down to the ground. Just one swoop, and whipped them down to the ground. And in the story from the Chandipath, at this point, she snatched up all the demons. She snatched up their weapons, their chariots, their horses, their elephants, and she began to hideously chew them up, just of course, and just obliterated them. In the story from the Chandipath, it says the ones that she did not capture and chew up with her vicious teeth, she trampled and viciously beat. You know, Chamunda's not really somebody who you take lightly. So at this point, Chanda and Munda shot 1,000 arrows at Devi, because remember, she had only captured their army at this point. And it is said that at that point, when these 1,000 arrows came raining towards her, she opened her mouth. And all the arrows went into her mouth and just began to shine being absorbed by what looked like a dark black cloud in her mouth. And at that moment, Kali Maa, in the form of Chamunda, began to laugh ferociously, and her teeth shined like bright stars. And sitting on top of her vahana, she grabbed Chanda by the hair and chopped off her head, his head, and then stabbed Munda dead. Hence her name, Chamunda. Now, if you're ever interested in reading the actual texts, this is one of the books that I use. It's the Chandipat. And this has a lot of recitations that we do during Navratri, which is right around the corner, by the way. Okay, onward. Name number 63. Varahi. Varahi. Varahi is one who is the boar of sacrifice, like a wild boar with tusks. And Varahi is the boar-faced goddess form of Kali Maa. She's also one of the matrikas who is real prominent this evening. Now, Varahi is the Shakti goddess of Vishnu. Good evening, Kari. Good evening, Kaku. And the Shakti goddess form of Vishnu, or his avatar, Varaha. So Varaha is the vicious or ferocious boar who came and rescued the earth from Hiranyaksha. All right, so some people say that Varaha gave rise to Varahi, his Shakti, from out of his nostrils. I thought that was a weird, not analogy, but an interesting thing that I read. Now, Varahi, as a form of Kali Maa, she has the head of a boar, right? We said that. And she rides a buffalo. Her vahana is a buffalo, and that represents ego. She is also sometimes seen riding a boar, so boar-headed, riding a boar. But other times she's seen riding a lion or just a plain chariot. She's also occasionally seen riding Shesha, the serpent. Now, Varahi is interesting. She's depicted as holding up either 2, 4, or 8 arms. It depends on what period of time and which text that you see the writings in. And she's holding a bell. She's holding a yak tail. Now, pause there for a second. Those of you who have done Kali Maa studies, many of you may have a bone mala, japa beads, made of the yak tail bones. So it's interesting. She's holding a yak's tail. She's also holding a chakra discus, a mace, a bow, a plow, a club or pestle, and she's also holding the 2 mudras, Abhaya and Varada. Now, a few other sources show her holding the classical kapala, the skull cup, and others show her holding a rosary, so japa beads. Varahi sometimes is listed as Varahi with a B, and in that case, she's often seen with a sow's face, not a boar, but a pig. Now, when we look at Varahi, she is worked with specifically during the night usually, and she helps remove internal and external obstacles and negativity, specifically things like envy, greed, and lust. And they say that her tusks help dig and cut and cleanse out our negative karma and illusion from our minds. They say that she helps reveal truth and brings us spiritual protection, destroying deep-seated mental problems, mental patterns, as well as hidden, unseen, and unknown karmic patterns. So Varahi is a very, very powerful form of Kali Maa. You see her used a lot in tantric work. Name number 64, Narasimhika. So some of you know who Narasimha is. Narasimhika is she who is the ferocious half lion form of Kali Maa. And Nara means human. Simha means lion. So Narasimhika is half human form or goddess body form and the head of a lion. Now, other forms you'll see Narasimhika come in are Narasimhi or Pratanjiri Devi. Pratanjiri Devi. Very, very powerful form of the Holy Mother. Narasimhika is also one of the forms of the Matrikas, and she is seen holding the damaru, the drum, the trishula, the trident to penetrate the three worlds. She holds a sword, and sometimes she holds the skull bowl, but she also is seen holding a brass drinking vessel. So here she is with the lion head, but also she has a vahana, her vehicle is also a lion. So lion-headed, riding a lion. And they say that Narasimhika brings and embodies divine justice. She triumphs over good and evil. And she is a raw, protective force of energy that conquers over a dharma, so non-righteousness, nasty people doing the wrong things. And she safeguards us and protects us from negative forces, not only internally, but also black magic. So a lot of people use Narasimhika, or not use her, but work with Narasimhika in the form of Pratyajiri Devi to counteract, rid, or prevent black magic, which is real. All right, name number 65. What do you think of these names so far tonight? They're big ones. All right, name number 65. Vajrāṅgī. Vajrāṅgī. So this means she who has limbs of lightning or diamond-bodied goddess. So Vajra means diamond or thunderbolt. And Vajra is power, resilience, and the imagery and personification of indestructibility. The Vajra is also the weapon used by Indra. And Vajrāṅgī is associated with Indrani, one of the Matrikas. She's also known as Indra. So Vajrāṅgī, Indrani, Indri, all the same association. Some lineages will argue that they're distinctly different, but not by much. So when we see Vajrāṅgī or Indrani, synonymous names, she's depicted sitting on top of an elephant. And she is said to have either 3 or 4 eyes on her face, but her body is covered with 1,000 eyes. She holds a lightning bolt, she holds a goad, a noose, and a lotus stalk. So very, very distinct when you see those 1,000 eyes on her body, or 4 eyes on the head, not just the classical 3. All right. Name number 66, Vajrakankali. Vajrakankali. And this means she whose head shines like lightning. Kankali means or is related to skeletons and bones, interestingly enough. And Vajrakankali symbolizes the lightning or diamond indestructible skeleton. Like imagine your bones indestructible or shining like lightning or perfect like a diamond. Why do we think of all these names of the Holy Mother? Shiva has the Sahasranama, 1008 names. Vishnu has the Sahasranama, 1008 names. Like, why? Why do we bother looking at all these different names? Because this makes available to us more and more ways to understand and relate and embody the Holy Mother. Now, when we look at Vajrakankali, the skeletal aspect of this is representing the permanence of pure consciousness that resides deep in our bones, even after the physical body has decayed. So we want to bring this sense of indestructibility, perfection, diamond body, so that we go through our lives embodying this deep intelligence. All right, 2 more for tonight. Nrmundasragviṇī. This is simple. She who is adorned by a garland. NR denotes human. Munda means skull or head. Shragviṇī is she who wears a garland. So it's specifically she who wears a garland of human heads. And by now, if you've been listening to the episodes, you know the iconography already. Now, Nrmundasragviṇī specifically is said to wear 50 human skulls. This is a classic feature of Kali Maa, and I think I've mentioned in one of the other episodes, why 50? And why 50 human skulls or demon skulls? Because when we recite the alphabet, the Varnamala, we place the 50 sounds over the body to eradicate 50 impurities from us, 50 shabdas, 50 sounds of the Sanskrit alphabet are used to purify the body and embody the Holy Mother. So this is one of the reasons why we see the 50 skulls, because we're eradicating the 50 demons with the 50 sounds of the Sanskrit alphabet. All right, last name for the night, Shiva. I thought Shiva was a man, right? No. Well, the name of Kali Maa, the 68th name, is Shiva. And Shiva we know is the energy, the consciousness, the infinite goddess. This is from the Puja book definition. But we know that Shiva means auspicious one. We know that Shiva is the omnipotent, omnipresent, all-knowing in all places, Adi Guru. So the first guru. The Adi Yogi, the first yogi, or the god of yoga, the god of pure consciousness. And we know that Shiva is the Holy Father. He's not only the transformer, but he's also the destroyer. Now, Shiva has very benevolent factors to him and also very ferocious factors. So it depends on what form of Shiva that you're working with. Like I said, there's also 1008 names of Shiva. That would be another long, long dive. And Shiva is often seen as the destroyer of demons. And when we see him, it is very obvious. He's wearing a big snake around his neck, which is the name Vasuki, the actual serpent king around his neck. And he always holds a drum, a dahamaru. Sometimes it's just on a stick, and it's a drum, not actually in his hand, but on a stick. And then he is classically seen with Trishula, the trident, three-pronged trident. And there's usually water flowing somewhere. So they say that the Ganga River flows down over his matted hair. And he classically has three eyes. And what's interesting is when he comes out of meditation and opens his third eye, it's said to turn everything to ash. So tonight we went over Shiva. We went over Nrmundasragviṇī, she who is adorned with garlands, human skull or demon skulls. Vajrakankali, she who shines like a diamond. Sounds like a song. She who shines like lightning. Vajrāṅgī, she who has limbs like lightning or a diamond. We also went over Narasimhika, the goddess Shakti of Narasimha, which is fantastic topic in and of itself. And then we went over Varahi, sometimes Varahi. And we went over Chamunda with her black body and sunken belly, sunken eyes, and fangs, who defeated Chanda and Munda. And we went over Maheshvari. So the verse for tonight. Maheshvari cha Chamunda Varahi Narasimhika Vajrangi Vajrakankali Nrmuṇdasragviṇī śivā. Jai Mom, Jai Mom. I hope you're enjoying these names. I hope they're opening up your mind channels, your spiritual channels, your perception of the Holy Mother. Like I've said in other episodes, some people just think of Kali Maa, like this classic picture. But now we know all sorts of other different embodiments and aspects of the Mother. So I hope to see you all next Tuesday, 6 o'clock, Pacific Coast, US time, and we'll be diving into verse 10. Like I said, if you ever want the words, I always describe them or type them out in advance in the description. And I hope you all have a wonderful night. Jai Maa. Jai Maa.